How many of you know that God is faithful? I mean, you really know that God is faithful in your lives. It's, you know, one of the things that we're excited about is the way that God stands with us and God vindicates us. And I want to bring just a little bit of a story to you this morning. Many of you have been coming to us asking some questions concerning a ministry with Reverend Philip Cameron. How many of you know the Camerons, the ministry from Moldova? Philip has been someone who has stood in this pulpit for many, many years and come and initially a minister from our women's ministry came and was invited in through our women, and we've had an incredible opportunity to get to know him. He's raised up orphanages over in Moldova, a youth camp here in Alabama. God's used him in incredible ways. 2 months ago, an accusation was made against him with two of the young women within the ministry, and it was a sexual allegation. And the folks who were involved in the ministry shared letters and put them out to all the different churches concerning what he was accused with. Let me ask you, how many of you received those letters? Some of you, I know you've done that. And so we've been a part of that process, because the reality is that is probably one of the most serious accusations that could be made against a man of God. I mean, one thing if somebody said, well, you know, they took $100 and they used it in the wrong way and stole that from the ministry. But when you're accused of being with especially two young women in that type of way, that changes absolutely everything in life. And so there's a stepping back from that process, and even from a person's life as they go through it. Well, some of you also received letters from the Camerons. Basically what has happened in the last, actually it's been 3 months, is there have been investigations that have started and have gone forth. Because as the accusations come out, some of you may have had the same reaction when you first read the letter that I did, that it just, the way it was gone about, something was just wrong with the way that it was stated and the way that they were progressing. They didn't attempt to bring him in, and the investigation seemed very hazy. And so an independent investigation was started, as well as an investigation through the Assemblies of God. Both of them commissioned investigators to go, and they interviewed folks here in the ministry. They went to Moldova, interviewed girls, sat down with the accusers. And what has happened this past week is both investigations have come back. And both the independent investigator and the investigator from the Assemblies of God came back and said this, that the accusations are false, and that Philip Cameron has been cleared of all wrongdoing. Now, and while that's wonderful for him, can I tell you that if somebody brings an accusation of sexual abuse against you, it almost doesn't matter if it's true or not. You get a scarlet letter on you. Well, and so part of what's happened during this time, many of you noticed that you haven't heard a lot from the Cameron family. There was 2 letters that was put out in the very beginning. What he did, what Philip's posture was, is that he was going to pull back and not attempt to vindicate himself. He submitted to a pastoral council and a number of different men, and he simply said, whatever you say to do, I will do. And I talked to him on the phone a couple weeks ago, and he said in his Scottish accent, you know, he teases me about being Irish, and we kind of go back and forth a little bit. He says, Shawn, I was done with ministry. He said, I couldn't believe that what had been said about me, and he said, I decided to go and just maybe drive trucks for a living. And anyone who's in ministry who gives themselves for the Lord, one of the things that you'll notice with them is that there's a lot of things that go around in ministry, but personal gain, if you sat down and really went through their finances, there's not a lot of retirement that's built up for many ministers. You're just trusting God all the way. So I sat down with him, and he said to me a little while ago, he said, you know, I've got $125 in my bank account. and there's in my savings and in my checking account there's $1,200. And he said, that's it. He said, everything else is in the ministry. And one of the things that also made us suspicious is that the people who made these accusations with the homes that had been built in the camp that was down in Alabama, they immediately put them up for sale in order to set salaries for themselves. And so when and some of these are places that we've given into, and so they put up the camp down in Alabama for sale for $4 million. And in other places, it wasn't a looking to continue the ministry, it was a looking to sell off the ministry. We recognize that as you step forward in faith, now here's the nugget to learn from this. When you step forward in faith, many times there is an attack that will try to destroy your life. People will say things about you. Folks that are close to you will turn. There will be unexpected things that come up in your life. And when you're here in years ago in 2005, it's almost hard to believe that life didn't turn out the way that you thought it was going to be 10 years later. Things have happened that took turns, and economy went the wrong way. Folks let you go from jobs and positions and didn't promote you the way that you thought was going to happen, and life as you know it right now was not what you thought it was going to be 10 years ago. Looking forward, anybody know what I'm talking about? And so in that, there's a couple of different reactions and responses we can have. We can sit back and say, you know what, I can't believe this. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm done with this. I'm going to try my own way and go at it my own way. Or we can recognize that in the middle of the storm and in the middle of the battle, there is still the Son of God that sits in your boat, that still rises up to bring vindication and protection over our lives. And so as we join together, that's part of what Philip did. And he said to me, Shawn, I'm not going to vindicate myself. He said, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to come under submission. And whatever they say to do, if it's drive a truck, I'll drive a truck for the rest of my life. And he was ready to let it all go. Well, these last couple weeks, I want to tell you something. What the devil means for evil, God turns around to use for our good. And God is beginning a turnaround. And what began to happen is that those who were being ministered to, remember all the girls and the orphans who had come, and if you're not familiar with the Camerons, what they've done is over in Moldova, in the orphanages, once they hit 16 years of age, they put the girls out on the streets. The orphanages no longer take care of them. They give them a $20 bill, and they're off on their own. When they send them off at the train stations, who's waiting to meet them there is the Russian mafia. And most of the girls are taken into different brothels, and they're used in the sex trade industry that is strong from that country. Philip has raised up homes called Stella's House, and they bring the girls in. And what's happened up to this point in time is he and his wife, Chrissy, did all the work, and the girls just sat back and received everything. Now, listen to this. Here's what took place. When Philip stepped back and said, I can't do it, what happened was, instead of things falling apart, the girls who were being ministered to stepped up. You remember we talked about this just last week. We talked about there not being, that's it. It's where we're going with our conference next week. It's not about us just sitting back and receiving what ministers or pastors do. God is calling us to step up. And part of what's happened with Philip having to step back is, instead of what the devil meant for evil, of everything being destroyed, suddenly the children of God began to step up. And they said, no, you know what? We're not going to settle for this. And we're not going to stay with the lies. And so what they were told, and they were the ones, the kids actually, who really exposed the ones who were bringing the lie. They came to the investigators and they said this: the people running this have told us if we will sign this complaint accusing the Camerons, that we can stay in this house. And if not, we have to leave and go back on the streets. Basically, they were blackmailing them in order to stay. The kids all banded together and said, we're going to do this. we're going to pull our money and resources together, and we're going to go out and start our own home, and we're going to bring others in and begin to minister to kids. And so now, instead of just there being a Stella's voice that's there, where one person was a voice speaking out, now there is Stella's hands, where many of the young people are standing up and saying, we're not stepping back, we're stepping up for the glory of God, and we're seeing lives continue to be changed. Now, Philip was very honest with me in this process. He said, Shawn, it almost destroyed me. Emotionally, everything that I worked for, that my dad worked for, was falling apart. He said, people turned on me, and we said this, and I did this as a representation for all of us. I said, Philip, we are not after man's kingdom. It's not about how much somebody can get for a house or property. We are about the kingdom of God, and for those who are doing God's work and stepping forward in God's kingdom, we will stand with you, and we will pray for you, and we will support you. And so I want to share with you today that in 3 weeks on November 8th, Philip Cameron and the girls from Stella's Hands will be right here in this pulpit and sharing with us on that Sunday morning. Then what we're going to do, the next night is a Monday night on the 9th, which is our ladies' ministry. The girls from the ministry are going to come back, and they're going to have, it's going to be a night of testimony and praise, and they're going to share testimonies throughout that night. In fact, I understand that we're inviting the young women from Samaritan's Purse, who are part of the sex trafficking in this area and who've been rescued from that. And they're going to come in and be a part of that to be ministered to. So we welcome you to extend an invitation for anyone that you know to come in that Sunday, and especially for women who've been battling in those areas for that Monday night. I believe that what the devil meant for evil, God will turn for His glory and for the good. And we want to tell you that in advance. So on November 8th, you can be ready. And about 3 weeks ago was the first time that Philip stepped back into a pulpit, and he was nervous because of all that had been said to him. And he told me this. He said, Shawn, I walked through the side door, and he said, when I came in, the entire congregation stood and began clapping. And he said the healing that just came over his heart, he just collapsed in sobbing in tears, that God would bring such a healing to his heart that the people of God would stand with him even during the battles, the hardest battle of his life. We tell you over and over again, Christians are meant for the hard times. We don't faint in the tough times. When the wind blows and when the waves come pounding in, that's when God has set us upon the rock of Jesus. And so we stand together in faith. We stand together in prayer. We stand together as we give in our finances. We're not giving towards that ministry today, but on November 8th, we'll be taking up a very special offering for Philip and for that ministry, and believing God to continue to turn it around. Amen.